and welcome to the Orlando World's Sunday Showdown round of 16. In this week's show, we bring you one of the most exciting battles of the tournament so far, with an interesting contest between two motion simulation attractions, with Pandora the World of Avatar ride, Avatar Flight of Passage, going up against the former predecessor of the Simpsons ride, the original Back to the Future ride. Before we jump ahead to this week's 5 rounds, let's take a brief look into both of these attractions. Avatar Flight of Passage is the 3D motion simulator attraction which has been such an incredible attraction for theme park guests to experience, along with the rest of Pandora the World of Avatar, which was the revamped area of Camp Mini Mickey at Animal Kingdom, opening on the 26th of May 2017. You experience the ride on the back of a Banshee pod and take flight through the incredible 3D world, which is presented on a giant IMAX screen, which immerses you into the open world along with an array of impressive special effects. Disney created one of the most invigorating and breathtaking 3D-themed attractions, which does extremely well at creating a lifelike world, which so many other 3D attractions find difficult to do. Its added senses of various real-life elements like wind, ocean spray and various smells all add to the realism, in what had been described as simply one of the best overall ride experiences at any theme park. Back to the Future was one of Universal's original attractions, which opened almost a year after Universal Studios, opening on the 2nd of May 1991 at a cost of over $40 million. The ride was delayed from the original park opening, after a lot of planning into creating the attraction changed from being an indoor roller coaster ride to the motion simulation attraction it ended up becoming. It was a highly popular attraction which was based on the events after the Back to the Future trilogy, and took guests on a journey through the space-time continuum and offered a fun-filled action-packed adventure, which was a bit more intense than the current Simpsons ride, and was a little more geared for a more adult audience. It was incredibly popular when it first opened, and set the tone for future 3D motion simulation attractions over the years that followed. Now let's head into this week's 5 rounds, and see which of these two attractions will take its place in the quarter-final round. Let's go to round 1. Avatar Flight of Passage, in terms of its overall theme and storyline, needs to be experienced to be truly believed. The incredible levels of detail from the overall theming of the Pandora world outside, with its stunning floating islands, bioluminescent flora and the breathtaking Valley of Mora mountain backdrop, the land is a paradise from the get-to. It's just as impressive heading through the attraction, with a cue theme to that of the ACT program, where almost 100 years after the events of the Avatar movie, both humans and Na'vi inhabitants are trying to restore levels of Banshee which have come under serious threat due to years of destruction at the hands of the RDA, and you pass through the camp laboratory with its life-sized member of the Na'vi housed in a water chamber, along with other recognisable props from the film. The ride itself features a giant near 100-foot IMAX screen which wraps around the Banshee pod systems, which are some of the most interactive ride seats ever built, with the legs harnesses featuring breathing pads, which simulate the breathing patterns of the Banshee you are flying on, along with the added elements which heighten your ride experience, giving you the absolute best 3D theme ride possible, and to top it all off with the bioluminescent cascade of colour at night, where the experience is just as special, adding yet another incredibly impressive level of immersion to its theming. Back to the Future was themed in the World Expo area of Universal Studios to look like Doc Brown's Institute of Technology. The theme at the time was adequate for standards at the time, with a lot of technical props and other industrial-looking elements, far and away less elaborate than the current Simpsons ride theme based on Krusty Land. The ride was based on the story of Doc Brown, who opened the Institute as a way of restoring the space-time continuum which he altered during events of the movie trilogy, only for the 1955 version of Biff Tannen to stow away in the time machine and is now wreaking havoc, with Doc Brown needing your help to stop him. The cars in the ride were actual DeLorean cars which had been reconstructed to work with the elaborate ride system, and were adapted to seat 8 people. The theme was worthy of the ride at the time, which featured a thoroughly enjoyable plot and took you into part of the world of film franchise. In round 1 then, for theming, only narrowly though, Avatar Flight of Passage takes the first point for being such a beautifully designed ride. Let's move on to round 2. Avatar Flight of Passage for a flight simulator attraction has a decent capacity. The attraction has a highly interactive queue area with plenty to keep guests entertained throughout the high wait times, and with many of the newer built attractions, Flight of Passage features 2 pre-show rooms, where you get a lot of the backstory, and some general ride instructions, as a way to pass the time before getting on to the main attraction. This helps to increase capacity as more people can experience the attraction at different intervals while taking away a lot of the long wait with nothing to do. Each briefing room holds 10 people, which means there are 10 Banshee pods in each section. There are multiple sections on several floors, which give the ride an average early capacity of up to 1,800 riders per hour. Back to the Future had a very similar ride capacity, which was housed in the World Expo building known as the Institute of Technology, which featured 2 giant domed theatre rooms, which were capable of holding 12 DeLorean cars which were spread out over a few levels. Each of the DeLorean cars seated 8 people in 2 rows of 4, which gave a total capacity for each theatre of 96 riders, with a combined total of 192 riders per ride cycle. Combined with the pre-show rooms, it made the capacity a very reasonable 2,000 riders per hour, which was good going for one of the earlier developed motion simulation rides. Its capacity was even more impressive given that the main show itself was considerably lengthy, which shouted how well the ride had been developed. So in round 2, Back to the Future takes the point to level the score as we go ahead into round 3. Flight of Passage is a multi-level kind of experience, which offers a fairly lengthy experience overall, if you include the briefing segments in the pre-show, and interactive themed areas throughout the queue sections, each giving a few minutes of added entertainment value. The full experience is around 20 minutes long when all things are taken into account, although the action main attraction itself lasts only 4.5 minutes. But it's well worth the wait, and with the added pre-show time, it's a decent experience in terms of its duration. The main show is quite short, with many riders wishing it lasted longer, but it's an exceptional experience, which feels much longer than it is, with a fairly good pacing throughout each area, making it a very well-balanced theme park attraction. Back to the Future was a very lengthy motion simulator ride. It was designed to be a short spin-off to the Back to the Future trilogy, taking place after the events in the 3rd film, and gave a little send-off to the film trilogy. Back to the Future took riders on the thrilling trip through the space-time continuum for an adventure that lasted approximately 15 minutes of time, which for a ride was extremely long, compared to some of the other kinds of theatre-style attractions at the time. The ride was well paced out, with a thrilling chase through various points through history based on parts of the films, giving a good balance of fast-paced chase scenes and a more laid-back part to filling in parts of the story. It was such a good ride that didn't feel too long, but it was a good enjoyable ride which felt like a feature-length experience. So in the 3rd round, Back to the Future blasts ahead in the contest, picking up the point as we head into the penultimate round. When it comes to popularity, there are very few major attractions that can match that of Avatar Flight of Passage. Since its opening in 2017, it's regularly been one of the most popular rides to visit, with often incredibly long wait times, which have been more than consistent over the last 3 years or so. It's easy to see why it's such a much-loved attraction, with its incredible scenery and stunning ride entrance area, to the scale of the theme and decoration throughout, and most importantly the main attraction itself in all its stunning 3D glory. Flight of Passage has been credited as being one of Disney's most valuable attractions, which brought a major boost to Animal Kingdom due to it being so highly regarded. It will most likely be Disney's marquee attraction at Animal Kingdom for many more years to come. Back to the Future had a very popular start to life at Universal Studios. It was heralded as a technological masterpiece, which gave many Back to the Future fans a bit of closure to the incredibly popular film trilogy, and gave them a chance to live out the dream of flying through time in the iconic DeLorean car. The ride operated with 2 individual domes, which allowed the ride to operate if one theatre ultimate had a failure, which meant that the ride was almost always operational. Back to the Future was way ahead of its time, but its popularity ultimately slowed down after a decade, due to the film franchise ending, which meant a lot of new park guests years late didn't know much about the movie, which made it less popular when it ultimately closed on 2007 and was rebranded to Krusty Land and The Simpsons Ride. So in round 4, good strong after only 3 years, is Flight of Passage taking the point and levels the score for being one of the most consistently popular attractions in Florida. Let's move on now to the 5th and final round. Flight of Passage in itself isn't the most thrilling ride if you are seeking the ultimate adrenaline rush. But where it does produce the thrills is through the sheer magic that the technology produces, taking you deep into the infinite world of Pandora. The thrills you experience are incredible throughout the journey, with a mesmerizing blend of emotions that you experience as you fly gracefully through Pandora. It's a ride that you really need to try to fully appreciate just how special an attraction it is, with its range of motion, stunning visuals and the addition of smells and weather elements counteracting what is playing out on screen. Flight of Passage is truly amazing experience which gives the riders a feeling of sheer freedom, taking you into a world that feels limitless and ultimately giving you an uplifting and empowering experience. Back to the Future was a very decent ride, much like today's version with The Simpsons Ride, but Back to the Future certainly had a more edgier feel, with a bit more of an action-packed feel as opposed to the comedic elements to the current ride. It was a much adored ride, with a great storyline, and had a lot of fun elements which gave plenty of thrilling moments throughout the journey. Unlike The Simpsons Ride though, the Back to the Future vehicles acted differently and used a 3-point system that let the ride tilt, pivot and move up and down, but it worked extremely well for the ride and its story. It was a fun ride, that many fans still claim is the best simulation ride to date, which is why it still is fairly popular at other Universal parks across the world. It had a somewhat nostalgic story which made it such a popular ride, and added to the thrill factor. So in the 5th and final round, Flight of Passage claims the final point to end the contest. And by looking at the results this week, after a back and forth contest, we do now have a winner. So sadly that does mean that Back to the Future finds itself out of the competition. Back to the Future was such an important attraction, not just for Universal but for 3D motion simulation rides in general. It set the bar extremely high, and for being a very early original attraction, it lasted an impressive amount of time, and is still fondly remembered today. The essence of the ride still lives on today with a more family-friendly and more popular attraction in The Simpsons Ride, which holds a few Easter eggs in store when you ride in homage to the Back to the Future ride. Avatar Flight of Passage advances to the next round. Join us next time for the final episode in the round of 16, for a battle between TTA People Mover and Expedition Everest. See you next time. We hope you enjoy this video. Please support us by subscribing to our channel. You can find us on social media platforms. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Orlando Worlds, and on Instagram at The Orlando Worlds. Thanks for watching.